Hi, I'm Lauren Sapala, and I'm here today to talk about the worst thing an INFJ writer could do while writing the first draft. Now, I say this is the worst thing an INFJ writer could do, and it's also one of the most common things I see with INFJ writers, unfortunately. INFJ writers tend to follow a certain pattern when they get blocked or when they sort of get derailed in their writing. So what happens in the initial stage, they usually will get an idea or a character will come to them, right? Or the seed of this creative project will sort of make itself known inside of them. And they can feel it, they get very excited, and it feels wonderful. It feels hopeful. It's like, ooh, inspiration. I want to write my memoir, or I want to write this novel. I can kind of like see how the whole thing might play out, and they get very, very excited. And so what they do, because they're INFJs, is they immediately jump into planning the novel or planning the memoir, planning the work. Because number one, INFJs are planners, and when we feel anxious about something, we plan even more. We are future oriented, and we are sort of big picture oriented, right? So whenever you see an INFJ who's anxious or stressed, we're always trying to go forward in the future. We're trying to jump forward, or we're trying to go up, 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 big picture, right? Visionary. And I hear this from so many INFJ writers who they say, I'm really stressed. I need to meditate more. The answer for INFJ writers is not to go even more spiritual, even more visionary, even more big picture or future oriented. When they get this inspiration, the best thing you can do as an INFJ writer is stay very grounded with it and stay very present with it. So what that means is don't jump ahead to the planning stage, because that's usually where INFJ writers go off the rails. So they have this newborn idea. Maybe they've even written the first chapter, right? Maybe the first few chapters, and it's still very exciting. And then they hit a wall. This is what I this is what I call the story going dark, if you will. I talk about this in my intuitive writing method. It's a very, very common thing for intuitive writers. The story goes dark. That means there's no more to be had from the story at this time, right? You've written the little fragment that's come through, you've written the section or the scene or the image that you've seen in your head, and now there's nothing else for a while. And when you try to look past that, you get this feeling of darkness, right? Or like a brick wall. Sometimes it feels like a wall, and sometimes it just feels like darkness. Most often I get writers reporting this feeling of darkness, right? Like you're in a car on a country road at night and your headlights have shut off. So you could see a little bit in front of you, but then your headlights shut off and now you're just in the dark. When that in the dark feeling kicks in, after the first chapter, the first sections are written, the initial inspiration is worn off, and that in the dark feeling kicks in, INFJ writers get very, very anxious. They get afraid that the inspiration is lost, that the idea is gone. And what happens when we get afraid, when we get anxious, we go into that planning mode. So the first thing we do is, I'm going to plan out the entire story, right? I'm going to try to get that big picture view, because that's where I feel good. That's my happy place, when I can see the big picture, when I can see the pattern. And if the other pieces of the story haven't come in yet, then we start pushing, then we start forcing. And INFJ writers can actually be very pushy in this way, not because we're naturally domineering people, but because when our anxiety kicks in, we want those pieces, we want to know, right? So what really happened here? We started out with the initial inspiration, those first few chapters, the beginning of the story. We started out working from our intuition, right? Something dropped in. It felt right. It was in alignment. It clicked for us. We felt it. This is good. This is it. I want to pursue this. This character, this idea, this is right. So we went with our intuition, and then we got the little bit out and we got into the darkness where we didn't really know what was happening anymore, and we got impatient. Instead of sitting back and waiting, we tried to jump to our third function, introverted thinking, because that's what INFJs will do under stress. We'll jump to our third function in the function stack, introverted thinking. And that's when we go into turbo organizing mode, turbo planning mode, right? So we're in introverted thinking now, and then we jump online and we're looking how to write a novel, how to research a novel, how to write a book. And we're getting all of these rational writing methods back from the search engines, right? Like, oh, you got to outline, you got to plan out the story arc, you have to make sure your antagonist has these 3 things. And we run with that. We really run with that because initially it makes us feel like we can soothe our anxiety about where the book is going. So then we start trying to outline. But when we start trying to outline and the rest of the book has not yet dropped down into our intuition, we're not using our intuition anymore. We're using our thinking. We're overthinking and we're trying to force it. We have now gone from receiving the story as a download, right, as this sort of like spiritual alternate reality download, subconscious download, whatever you want to call it. We've gone from receiving it as a download to using our conscious mind and actually our left brain to try to push it out, to try to come up with something, to try to make something up. That feels way different. Receiving a story feels good. It feels expansive. It feels warm and open and exciting. It feels very similar to falling in love. Making stuff up, pushing the story, forcing the story, overthinking the story, coming up with where the story should go and what it should look like, that doesn't feel so good. That feels sort of dreadful. There's this feeling of dread around it now. There's this resistance. All of a sudden we don't want to sit down. We don't want to work on it. It doesn't feel good. And that's usually the point where INFJ writers give up. They give up on the idea, they give up on the manuscript or the book because it feels too hard and it honestly doesn't feel like very much fun anymore. I've seen this cycle with literally hundreds and hundreds of INFJ writers. I've gotten emails from people, I have coached people, I have people in my classes, I have talked to so many INFJ writers who have gone through this cycle. It's very, very common. The solution is that you've got to stop overthinking. You've got to step away from your thinking function and you've got to stop trying to figure the whole thing out. Yes, you will be anxious. Yes, you will feel like you're in the dark. That's okay. If you are using an intuitive writing method, that's actually right where you want to be, and that's a natural part of that method. There are little stops and starts all along the way. So sometimes you're going to be flowing and you might even be flowing very fast. And at other times you're going to be totally stopped and you're going to be waiting for the next piece to drop in through your intuition. So we're shifting out of thinking back into the intuition. If you want to know more about how to use intuitive writing as a method, I have a video course. It's on my site. I've been doing a COVID special for quite some time. It's $50. I'll probably raise the price in a little bit. I'm not really sure when, but you should grab it up when you can because it's a great foundation for INFJ and INFP writers to really use their natural intuition and to get out of that thinking, that toxic, dysfunctional overthinking that INFJ writers in particular do so much of the time to derail their work and their books. I've seen so many success stories from people switching into intuitive writing. It's crazy. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. You can email me writecitysf@gmail.com or you can leave a question in the comments below. Until then, I'll see you all next time.